Welcome to this forum for the city of Pleasant Ridge. These are candidates who are running for city commission. We have 4 candidates and there are 2 open seats. Today is September 26, 2017. The sponsor of this forum is the League of Women Voters, Oakland County. I am Tara Moon. I am a member of the League of Women Voters. I am not a resident of Pleasant Ridge. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, national, nonpartisan political organization whose members do the hands-on work to keep democracy safe. We are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. As a League member, I have the opportunity to serve in a leadership role such as this one that has a great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning how you can make a similar impact, I would encourage you to look at our website for membership information, or why delay? We have membership forms here tonight. You can join the League tonight. Our website is lwvoa.org. The League does not endorse any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and we, the sponsors, take no responsibility. The format for this forum has been established by the League of Women Voters. We ask that you, the audience, remain silent throughout the presentation. You have the opportunity to ask questions by writing them down on a card and submitting them to a page who is circulating through the audience. She's back there right now. If you want a card, raise your hand and she'll bring it to you. When you're ready to turn it in, raise your card in the air and she will bring it up to Judy, who is our screener. Judy will be screening the questions for relevancy and duplication and appropriateness. All the candidates will have 1 minute for an opening and closing statement. They'll all have 1 minute to answer most questions. Sometimes we make the call to extend the amount of time that they have to answer a question, but I'll let you know when that happens and I'll let the timer know as well. Our timer tonight is Sue, so she will be holding up signs and letting the candidates know when they have a few seconds left and when they need to stop their statement. We usually let you finish your thought if you're in the middle of a thought and the stop sign goes up. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer the questions, and the questions will be asked. Every candidate will have a chance to answer every question. So let me introduce the candidates tonight. With us tonight are Sean Campbell, Alex Lenko, Brett Scott, and Amanda Wall. So without further ado, let's begin with opening statements, and we will start with Sean Campbell. Mr. Campbell.
Good? Okay. So first of all, thank you everybody for coming, especially thank you to the League of Women Voters for all the work that goes into putting this on, and thank you to my fellow candidates. My name is Sean Campbell. My wife Megan and I moved to Pleasant Ridge and bought our house on Sylvan in 2010. We're expecting our first child in early December, so we're planning on raising our family here. We're going to be here for a while. I grew up in Canton. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Lawrence Tech in 2005. I worked in engineering while attending law school at night and graduated from Detroit Mercy School of Law in 2014. I currently work for GM as a government contracts manager. My goal tonight is to hopefully that you will all get to know me as well as you can, and that you will see that my passion, my love for the city, my background, and my education will make me a good city commissioner. And again, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Alex Lenko.
Hi, thank you. So first of all, I want to say I love our city and its educated and engaged electorate. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on and putting democracy to work. And again, thank you to all the candidates for filling all these slots for 2 available commissioner slots. So at the risk of sounding sensational, I'm a Pleasant Ridge lifer. I've grown up in this room playing dodgeball and bumper pool. I grew up at the pool making lifelong friends, swimming on the swim team, and really learning a good work ethic by working at the pool and by volunteering countless hours from the foundation on the back of the trucks all the way through to a trustee as an adult. So I boomeranged back in 2015. I'm currently a buyer at an auto supplier. Our city buys a lot of services. I'm a buyer of services. So I feel like those are congruous And I'm in love with the city, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Brett Scott.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming this evening. It's a great crowd that we have tonight, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for having the event, and to my fellow candidates. I'm Brett Scott. I'm one of your sitting city commissioners. I'm on the city commission now. It's been an absolute pleasure serving the city for about 3.5 years, and I can't tell you how rewarding it has been to be on the city commission here. We live in a great city, and for me, it's not about big sweeping changes that we need in Pleasant Ridge. I think what I mentioned even 4 years ago, it's always about tweaking something that's good and making it just a little better over time, and taking this blend of creating a long-term goal, long-term plans for the city, and balancing that against the things that we know are special about our community, the charm and all of the things that just make it a really nice place to live. We want to balance that so that's a long-term good thing for the city. And that's what I hope to continue doing for the city for the next 4 years, if you would be so kind to vote for me. Thanks for coming again tonight, and I have to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Amanda Wall.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to talk to us and listen, and thank you for the people who are running with me, and thank you for the League of Women Voters. I want to introduce myself. I'm a 16-year resident. I got involved, and I'm going to tell you why I'm inspired to run and serve the community. I've been involved for 10 years. I've been on the foundation. The Pleasant Ridge Foundation is how I started. I've been vice president for the past 5 years. That inspired me to my next volunteer opportunity, which was serving 2 terms as a rec commissioner. And this brought me to the Gainsborough Park project, which I want to talk about because I'm very proud of our city for doing it. The foundation was able to donate the money for the toddler area, and everyone was able to see that. And then, we asked if the city wanted a millage to increase to build the park, and people did. And then we were able to engage the community, the rec engaging, the rec commission engaging the community, and get feedback and build a park that people actually wanted and have it be a direct reflection. And just the collaboration and community that created is what I thought was really special. And I want to serve you in a more comprehensive way, which is why I'm running for this.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. I forgot to mention one important direction. Turn off your cell phones, please, or at least put them on silent. Okay, now we're going to jump right into questions, and we'll start with Mr. Campbell, and then after that, we will rotate who goes first, and I'll prompt you. Okay, Mr. Campbell, the first question. What is the most pressing issue the city currently faces, and how should it be addressed?
So I think the most pressing issue is the one that was presented before us before this meeting, which is the unfunded liability on our police pension fund. After listening to Jim's presentations a few times tonight and also in the regular monthly commission meetings, I think that the city has made good decisions for the long-term fiscal health of the community, and I think that the amount that is being asked of in November is based off of there are a lot of estimates, and I know that there were some issues with a lot of those being estimates, but I think the ask is based off of comprehensive data, and so as the son of a police officer, and I've seen when a city makes terrible financial decisions and then tries to balance their budget on the backs of their retirees, I know that this is something that's incredibly important, not just for us as residents, but for our retirees.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko.
Yes, thanks for the question. So to be upfront and honest, we need to meet the obligations that we have, obviously, but I'm disappointed and a little, it is disappointing that it's been kind of a ticking time bomb, and the way it was described, it's been a slow-moving train wreck. So for the notion that it has to be sprung, a millage has to be sprung, needs to be considered, and when elected, I will enact the will of the voters. So personally, I'm in favor of meeting the obligation, but I will do what the electorate asks of me as the commissioner. That being said, safety is the top priority, and when we're looking at other areas to cut, we really need to have that fine point, that pencil on the paper, well in advance of asking for a millage, and that was brought up during the first meeting. Cost-cutting measures are in the air and on the radar, but they haven't been specifically planned or implemented. So as a buyer, I would look to implement those types of cost savings initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Yes, I'll expand what we've heard already and say it's funding in general. We know, looking forward in time, everything that the city buys is getting more expensive, and so we have to be cautious about the way that we spend money so that we have long-term viability as a city. All of the concrete suppliers that we buy concrete from, for example, are charging more for concrete. So to keep our roads nice, we have to plan a little more carefully on how we do our road maintenance. The pension plans is another area that consumes a lot of money for the city, and we have to plan that out correctly as well. So you'll hear me say quite often, plan what we do, maintain what we have, and look ahead to the future, and this is true for our funding. We absolutely must keep a very careful eye on how we spend money as a city in all regards for all of our assets to make sure that we stay viable into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Hi, I think that the police funding issue is the most important issue, just like we just, for people who weren't here, but, to research it and make an educated decision. I agree with, I think that we need to fund it. And I think, and I've been talking to residents about what their biggest concern in the city is and what they value, and police service is always the number one thing people say, and I think people need to really dig deep and think of if this is what they want to support, and by voting for this millage, you will be supporting funding, us meeting our debts and keeping our promises, and going forward as of 2011, we are, we have been being proactive to try to get this in line. So I say vote with what you feel is a priority, and we will, the residents will make the decision.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. The next question will start with Mr. Lenko. What is your position on Pleasant Ridge offering seniors and low-income residents help with house chores, grass cutting, and snow shoveling? Small donations to be requested?
That's a great question. And as far as my platform, ECO, which stands for Environment, Community, and Organization, that's one of the topics under organization. So having a formalized time bank or some sort of formalized program where a senior or anybody else could contribute cash, as opposed to putting in time. Like a typical time bank is you donate time for time given back. This would be another type of service where you could, and then also as a buyer, I'm familiar with concepts called group purchasing organizations where you consolidate spend. So coming up with just basically paradigms where you can have services that are delivered at a discount to select populations who need help and can't shovel their driveway or mow their lawn themselves, which is something that I think can be formalized and implemented relatively simply.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Well, one of the benefits of living in Pleasant Ridge is that we're all pretty well connected with one another. And so if you see residents that need help, just let somebody on the city commission know. We can probably get the word out so that we can help each other help senior citizens, low-income people in town to get things done as an immediate measure. Long term, we should probably look at things, services to endorse for people that may pool the cost of the services together so that together we save money on things that we all spend the same way. That's something that we haven't considered yet, but it might be something we look at into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
What is your position on Pleasant Ridge offering seniors and low-income residents help with house chores, grass cutting, and snow shoveling? Small donations to be requested?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, the whole thing that we love about the city is community, and that people do step up to help. I think that creating some type of group to help, get this done for people and see what the interest is in our community doing that outreach, I think would be great. I think that's another way to build community, which is, what for those of you who don't know, this is what I'm running on, is building community and involving people and helping. And I can't imagine that we couldn't start something and really make a difference in these people's lives and put our money to good use.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I like the idea of asking residents if they'd like to join something like a club. So one of the examples I think of is I forget the name of them. They're a group of guys that have lawnmowers, and they pick a plot in Detroit, and they go down and they volunteer and they cut a plot. And so maybe reaching out to residents and seeing if you have a snowblower, if you want to volunteer you'll pick up maybe 3 or 4 addresses that you'll do their driveways and their sidewalks, and then another person would volunteer for another 3 or 4, or create a community-based group, maybe something that you would start on Facebook that would be endorsed by the city commission, where you could get together and maybe paint somebody's porch, cut somebody's lawn. The examples that the person who asked the question gave, and then potentially that group could do some fundraising that would be best for it.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. The next question will start with Mr. Scott. What is the role of a commissioner, and what have you done to prepare for this role?
A little bit of an unfair advantage, maybe. I would say it this way: our first and foremost task is to listen. Really be able to take in the input of all of the people and the businesses in the city and come up with something that works for most people. You know that you'll never satisfy everyone in any town. We're fortunate to have a small enough town that most people, I think, are happy with the way things are going. So we've, over the last 3.5 years, spent a lot of time just making sure that we are open to input and very responsive to the things that we've heard. And all at the same time being mindful of what city government is here for, and that's for the long-term stability of the city. And usually the two things have balanced out with each other, so it's a good thing. And I would continue to do that into the future, just taking the input from residents and turning that into good plans. Gainsborough Park is an example of feedback that we received. There are other examples where we've taken that input and made it a good thing for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
I believe being a city commissioner is being a public servant, and I know that people, being the voice of what our community wants and helping transform what our community wants into real things every day. What I've done to prepare is I've been involved with the city for 10 years, and I've tried to educate myself and be a part of what I can be a part of. I didn't mention it before, but I have a behavioral sciences degree from U of M, and that, I think understanding people and the way things work is a critical piece to what I can bring to the table. And being fiscally responsible with our resources and having careful consideration and looking for the best efficiencies without necessarily sacrificing quality, and giving it lots of discussion and thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
I agree with Commissioner Scott that the most important role of the city commissioner is to listen to what the residents have to say and then try and implement their suggestions into either a decision that has to be made or a problem that has to be solved. The reason why I ran, a big part of that is because I've done that in my professional career. I've spent a lot of time listening to different groups of people with different contexts and different backgrounds, and then working either to establish something like a process or a process plan, or to solve a problem. Either in a manufacturing environment, when you're dealing with union labor has a certain concerns with a certain context, and the engineering staff has certain concerns with a certain context. When you're doing process improvement, listening to all of the people in your group and weeding out the ideas that maybe don't work, historically haven't worked, and pushing forward the ideas that would be best. And I think that's what the City Commission has done on the projects that have been the most successful, and I think that that's what I would like to be a part of doing.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
Thanks. So I'm steeped in the volunteer culture of this city, and as part of growing up, that was part of my upbringing. When I boomeranged back to Pleasant Ridge in 2009, I joined the foundation. Shortly thereafter, I was appointed to the Millennial Mayors Congress, which was an intergenerational partnership between regional leaders and millennials. I served on, most recently, and my term just ended, but 2.5 terms on the Planning Commission and Downtown Development Authority, of which I was the chairman for the last year. So I have experience working with Jim, Scott, and Amy, and the rest of the city. I've got experience working with the current commission. I've got an understanding of issues big and small. Particularly, I worked on the master plan, the 2013 revision of the master plan, so I've got my finger pretty well on the pulse.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. The next question will start with Ms. Wall. What is your impression of the Ferndale Public Schools? What role do you feel it plays in our community, and what is the optimal relationship between Ferndale Public Schools and Pleasant Ridge?
I feel that I feel that the Ferndale school system does play a big part in Pleasant Ridge. I think that obviously public schools are critical to any community, and trying to make them as good as they can be and investing resources and time into it can do nothing but benefit our children and benefit our community. I know that I met Danya Bazzi. She's the new superintendent. She seems to be very hands-on. I think that will do nothing but be great for our children. And if you hire me to do this job, I will work very hard to, help as much as I can and try to be a problem solver and shine a positive light on the Ferndale schools and work with as it relates to Pleasant Ridge.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
I think Ferndale Public Schools is a system that is struggling, but it's improving. I know that there's a lot of residents of Pleasant Ridge that are not happy with Ferndale, and they choose not to send their kids there. And I respect whatever decision our residents decide to make for their children. But I think that the proper role for Pleasant Ridge and the City Commission is to participate with the district, offer what we want to see as parents of students, and also to listen to what the school district is doing and communicating that back to the city, so that parents are making the decisions for their children that are with the most accurate and most up-to-date information. I think some of the reputation that the district has is valid, and it has struggles that it has to overcome, but I think some of the reputation it has is outdated, and that we have a good opportunity, the district has a good opportunity to make some improvements. We have 2 of our residents that are on the school board. We have a new superintendent, and I'd like to see Ferndale compete better for the children of our city.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
So as a buyer, I've learned that a partnership really does consist of 2 parties. It's not one party leaning on the other. With that being said, I'm a product of Ferndale education, K through 6th grade. Then I went to U of D High School from 7th to 12th grade. My 3rd grade teachers in the audience. I have fond memories of Ferndale. Many of my friends went all the way through. I know that there are flaws there, and there are positive aspects too. I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And I want to work, and especially with the new superintendent. I met her at the city commission meeting, and she has some really interesting ideas about personalizing the education experience for each student. So I'm excited to see what's in store for Ferndale Public Schools and its relationship with Pleasant Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
I think the city of Pleasant Ridge has a bit of an obligation to try to be good to the Ferndale schools. A lot of our kids go to Ferndale schools. Thanks to Commissioner Foreman for keeping us abreast of information that's happening in the school district. All school districts in Michigan are going through challenges right now. It's a tough time to be a school district, as a general statement. The Ferndale schools have done better than some others. I have come from a product of the Pontiac School District. Every teacher in that school district was fired when the city went bankrupt and rehired. So Ferndale is by far in better shape than some others, although there's always room for improvement. One of the things that we did is support the new board and support all of the administration in Ferndale schools. I think anything that we can do to help them be a good school district is really our task in Pleasant Ridge. It's one of our obligations, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. The next question will start with Mr. Campbell. Assume the Recreation Department spends more than its budget for 3 years. What is your advice to the city manager to address this?
So I think the first opportunity is to look at if there are opportunities to add some revenue to balance out some of the subsidies, as we were discussing earlier, that there are some programs that have opportunities for residents to pay into, and then look at if there are inefficiencies, if part of the overruns are based on inefficiencies, and then try and work with the city staff to reduce as many of the inefficiencies as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
Yes, so a great point would be looking into additional revenue sources such as grants, but another aspect really would be imposing, or rather codifying, some sort of savings target from the city manager or from the city employees as part of like an overall overarching goal, because the recreation department and its programs really do make this city very special. I can speak from experience growing up playing video games here and playing bumper pool, and as an adult just this last summer doing the adult swim meet. It brings people together. It's very important, and it really colors the texture of this neighborhood. So. But yeah, I would say responsible financial management is kind of the essence of what I'm bringing, and then also is something that I would want to see enacted.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sure. Assume the Recreation Department spends more than its budget for 3 years. What is your advice to the city manager to address this?
So as a general statement for the city, we make sure that we balance our city budget every year. So however we shift funds, we make sure that the city budget balances. It may mean that some years recreation budget is higher and other things are lower, so that things balance. But depending upon where the money was taken from, it may be more difficult to balance. For example, the pool fund is its own budget that we manage onto itself. It's not something that we can borrow from or take from. We have to manage it on its own. So specific to recreation, we know that recreation is really important to the city. It's a way that we bring other people into our community to enjoy our city. We want to make sure that that's managed well. And we'll go to the residents to make sure that the funding that we give to recreation is matching what's expected of the community. And that's what we've done for the last 3.5 years. We ask the citizens, we see what people want, and that's what we've delivered to date.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Okay. I would advise Jim to look at the budget and look at the programs, and like Commissioner Scott said, I would look and see and survey the community. Like the community's done a lot of Survey Monkey and see what people find valuable. And obviously you'd have to balance it and make some potential cuts. Try to find resources like donation resources or from the foundation. Maybe we'd go to them for some programs depending on how large or small the deficit was. You have to be creative, and you have to be a creative problem solver when trying to figure this out and try to minimize the impact on these awesome programs, because that's why so many of us live here, is because we enjoy these these community programs that the rec offers that make our children and make all of us feel a part of it and promote community.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. The next question will start with Mr. Lenko. I'm combining two questions that are on a similar theme. The first person wonders, what are your thoughts about protecting our environment in Pleasant Ridge? And someone else asked, do you have any ideas related to the problem of wildlife in our city, such as skunks, rats, squirrels, etc.?
Interesting question, and I hope I have enough time to touch on all of it. So first of all, the environment to me is the crucial matter of our time. Without a planet, we don't have a place to debate and argue and live and grow families and grow old. The environment here, it's punctuated by loads of just mature and beautiful trees. Everybody has impeccable gardens, nature, greenery, verdant. Those are all adjectives I use to describe Pleasant Ridge. And as far as what I would do as city commissioner when I'm elected is partner with the organizations such as the Garden Club to ensure that the tree programs and that all of the plant programs are in place, and potentially find ways to shift cost from the city onto donations. And then as far as the rats and the other vermin are concerned, I would also suggest having a compost program where we move food compost from individuals' backyards and so forth to a central and secure location that would limit the prevalence of rats and so forth. Squirrels, they're our friends.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Yes, I agree with Alex. Protecting our environment and making sure that we have city services that encourage the protection of our environment, I think, are really important, and that's why we are beginning to investigate solar panel programs. In fact, the building of maybe 20 feet above us, 15 feet above us, we have solar panels that are now installed on the building due to an increased interest in conservation, using less energy, and something that's renewable. The new recycling bins that everyone has received is part of that interest in making sure that people do more to be conservative on how they use things. With regards to wildlife, it's an interesting question because one of the challenges we have is that we live along Woodward Avenue. We have an alley or several series of alleys, and we know that that alley traffic is going to attract a certain amount of stuff into our neighborhoods, all kinds of stuff. So it's just something we'll have to manage as a city if it picks up with something else to do.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
I support our environment. I support, right now we have, the city's got a strategic energy plan that we again surveyed people for, and we've done good work, like Commissioner Scott said, as far as like the solar panels and the LED lights throughout the community center and City Hall. The city is also engaging Semrio to try to make it like a turnkey program for people if they do want to explore doing some solar and some green things with their house to try to save energy. So I would support those initiatives and continue along with it. I also think that we have to balance out our historical designation as well to make sure that things that we are being true to who we are, as well as being green and protecting the environment. As far as the animals, I think we just need to be vigilant about garbage, keeping our garbage, keeping wood piles, and trying to cut down on obviously, who wants to say rats, but rats and things of that nature. Hire a rat patrol.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I think the city's made really good decisions in terms of balancing, reducing our carbon footprint, but also reducing costs to the city. I think that I'd like to see us, I think we can handle some of the rodent problem at the same time that you do some environmental things. So I'd like to see us find ways of using economy of scale to offer residents less expensive, or if we pool our resources, we could buy cheaper composting units, and then encourage the environmental committee to teach people how to compost properly. Do it in conjunction with the garden club, since we have the community garden. I'd also like to see if there's an opportunity to get rodent-resistant trash cans for everybody. I think part of the problem is that a lot of residents don't stick their garbage into trash cans, and so they're open for rodents to go after. I think that's some low-hanging fruit, but I think the challenge will be how do you do it in a way that's economically responsible, so that residents aren't just paying for those outright, but then the city isn't just buying everybody a trash can.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Scott. You've talked about environmental issues a little bit. This question continues that. The city has an energy policy through 2020. What do you see the city doing as alternative energy and conservation beyond that, both in the city's energy use and its residents' use?
Well, the good news is that we are definitely on a good path as a city to conserve our electrical use. We're constantly monitoring how we're using our electrical energy. And with the solar panels having been installed on the building and with the LED lighting going in around town, we've seen a very noticeable drop in our consumption of electric power. We're also monitoring our water use on city property. It's interesting, pipes leak after 100 years, so there's a certain amount of our water use that will always be there because of the fact that the pipes are a little leaky, so about 10% of the city's water bill to itself is just from leaks in the 100-year-old system. but we monitor how we use the water to keep grass green. In the meantime, we definitely want to make sure that our community stays very, to overuse the word pleasant, maybe very pleasant. So you're going to see us continue the maintenance of our facilities the way we have, but at the same time, try to find ways to reduce our use of resources.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Along those same lines of what I was just talking about, us constantly looking for different programs to help, and we are on a good path. I think it's supposed to be a 25% reduction by 2020, and I think the measures that we've taken recently, like we were talking about the solar panels, the LED lights, I think we're on a good path, and also with the SEMRIO, hopefully soon, being able to reach out and offer that to residents as well. And I would continue, if I was elected commissioner, to research and investigate other alternative ways to keep going along with that and decrease our consumption and bring our costs down.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I think the solar panels and the rec center and then the LED streetlights were good examples, and I think Jim and city staff are doing a really good job of looking for opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint. I like the traffic slowing study that was done at the corner of Woodward and 696 to see if we can increase foot traffic. I know I've talked to a lot of residents knocking on doors the last month that would really like to ride their bikes or walk to Holiday Market, and they just don't feel that it's safe, and a big part of that is that intersection. So I think in addition to looking at ways of reducing electricity and ways of looking at reducing water, I think we also need to look at opportunities to reduce the amount of automobiles that we use. If there's any opportunity to do so, I know that we live right outside the Motor City, right, and everybody loves the freedom that your car brings, but there are lots of residents, and I think there are going to be more future residents that are going to be more interested in transportation opportunities that don't involve their car.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
So echoing the traffic calming study, I was the chairperson of that subcommittee that did the traffic study, and I wholeheartedly support moving forward with some sort of improvement of that Main Street intersection, because bikeability and walkability is very important to greening of the city and just important to quality of life. I ride my bike all the time, and that's a very noticeable intersection. Two things I would do specifically, just in memory from recent city commission meetings, is ask better questions and set better targets. Asking better questions, it came up some sort of contest between all of the surrounding cities to increase the amount of recycling based on the new recycling bins. I think a better metric to follow would be like an absolute total reduction in waste, as opposed to having who can create the most recycling. We should try to be seeing who can create the least amount of waste. And then secondly, the targets the city manager brought up in the meeting were easily attainable. Just coming from my work background, I would like to see goals that are stretch targets rather than easily attainable. So the 2.5, I'm sorry, I'm over time, but hit more challenging targets.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. The next question will start with Ms. Wall. Also continuing on the energy theme, how can the City Commission help communication with DTE to ensure better service, especially for those residents that lose power for extended periods?
I would say, obviously, forge a relationship and be a constant presence so that they are aware. Because I myself, I lived on Fairwood in Kensington prior to buying a house on Oxford 2 months ago, and I experienced, I had issues with my power going out, and there's nothing more frustrating than your power going out and not understanding, how long it's going to be, what's happening, and it would be nice, I would like to be an advocate for that and try to, have a good communication plan when things like that happen and focus on that, and because obviously education is key. If I know what's going on, I can handle it. If I can, if I have a time management, I know it's going to be 2 hours or 3 hours, and I feel like someone's working on my behalf, I can live with that. So I would be committed to working on that and improving that.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I think I think there's good communication between the utilities and the police department, and I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to piggyback a communication strategy for power outages with an emergency plan that Residents can sign up for text message alerts from the police department that the police department can send out if there's an emergency, and potentially we could use that to provide residents with the most up-to-date information on utilities. As somebody who spent all day yesterday dealing with one of our large oak trees falling in our backyard and taking out all the high power lines and causing all of our residents in our area to lose power, I am very recently reminded of dealing with DTE and all of the beautiful old trees that we have here that when things go wrong, they definitely cause problems.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko.
So again, the city is punctuated with beautiful old majestic trees, which is one of the key characteristics of our beautiful and special city. And as a buyer, I would want to take just specific actions and either impose or work with DTE as a partner, certain service level agreements and metrics, especially as far as trimming trees and keeping dead branches off of trees and away from limbs, or away from power lines, that is. And if they're not receptive to that, maybe structure some sort of just, again, paradigm whereby the city can remove dead branches and build back DTE or something along those lines. But have a starting point there and work our way back to safe power lines, because it's infeasible really to bury all the lines. That would be the best solution.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott.
This is a tough one because it's one of those you can't fight City Hall even when you are City Hall type of issues. We know that utilities are hard to work with. Railroads, energy sources, cable, all of these companies are hard to work with. And the city already does what it can to try to make things easier for residents when there are problems. But the realist that I am, I will tell you that it's a difficult relationship. I don't know that there's a lot more that we can do to improve our relationship with DTE. However, there are things that we can do to help ourselves. So when we do have outages, we can open up our recreation center so that people have a place to go in the event that we do have a 5 or 6 day outage and people need a place to shower. There are things that we can do to make our community more accessible, the resources that we have available to ourselves accessible in the event that there are problems. But to be realistic, it's going to be tough to improve that relationship just based on what DTE is, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Campbell, you'll start the next question. Do you believe the role of Pleasant Ridge City Commissioner involves advocating for issues that extend beyond our city limits and touch on issues of regional, state, and national importance?
I do. I think that we are part of a metro Detroit community. We're part of a county community, and I think that if we have residents that are interested in a particular thing, that if the city commission can use the communication tools that we have to advocate for some of those things. I think that there are issues that the city deals with, things like revenue sharing, that are based on state law, and that the only way to change them is if the state law changes. And I think that there's an opportunity to communicate with residents if they want to advocate for changing the law, and they have friends that live in communities in close proximity, that they communicate with their, and not in a way that the city is taking a political position on something, but making sure that residents are aware that if the only way to solve a problem is to get the law changed, then there needs to be advocacy to do so in Lansing.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko.
So as millennial mayor rep for the city, I learned quite a deal of regionalism, especially as it relates to consensus building and the greater challenges. Pleasant Ridge was founded as a city in 1928 under threat of annexation from Ferndale or Royal Oak. So our city is uniquely situated, and again, regionalism is a double-edged sword. We are part of this region inextricably, part of this Woodward Corridor, part of southeastern Michigan, part of the state. So working on regional issues is very important, but also protecting and preserving Pleasant Ridge until our bicentennial and beyond that, 2128. That's important to me. So maintaining our position in this region is of the utmost important to me because this is a special city that I love.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Yes, absolutely. Southfield claims to be the center of it all, but I would venture that Pleasant Ridge is more of the center of it all, being on Woodward and 696. We see a lot of traffic through our town, and Woodward Avenue, by being in the middle of Woodward Avenue, requires us to be good partners with the cities around us as we begin planning for transit systems that might run along Woodward, making sure that traffic runs safely along Woodward, so that's very important, and working with our neighbors to keep that going. Certainly on a state level, we want to make, the interesting thing is that funding is changing significantly for each city, so we want to make sure that our shrinking funding from the state is managed properly and managed alongside our partner cities. We are also recently signed up to be a welcoming city, so we are open to people of all kinds into our city as residents, as also people that attend or come to our businesses. Back in 2013, I helped with our human rights ordinance. It's a national level issue, along with Commissioner Krzyjak, and again, I hit the stop sign. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah,
Please?
sure.
Thank you.
Do you believe the role of Pleasant Ridge City Commissioner involves advocating for issues that extend beyond our city limits and touch on issues of regional, state, and national importance?
Yes, I do. I believe that it's important how people perceive us and how we're perceived by our neighbors, and I think it's important that we work together with state level. Like Commissioner Scott said, we're losing revenue. I think it's important for us to try to partner with people and take advantage of, of partnerships to help us with the dropping funding. I think it's important how our neighbors view us as far as coming through our neighborhood. I was able to go to the Welcoming Cities meeting when we talked about being a welcoming city and everybody coming through here and people feeling like people getting the feeling of what we all know, that this is a loving community and that we do extend ourselves and what it's like to be in this. I mean, our community is special and small, but I think it's important that people understand that it's open for everybody and that everybody, what it's, a good representation of who we are and not just a closed off small community, that people, can understand that we do welcome everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. The next question starts with Mr. Lenko. Is there anything we can do to prevent unwanted solicitation?
Well, my understanding of the current rule is that solicitors have to register with the city. If they don't register with the city, then they're in violation. So if there are unwanted solicitors, my recommendation would then be to call City Hall, call the police, the non-emergency line, obviously, and just make the complaint. And the other point is you can also get a no solicitor sign that you can put on your door that doesn't keep religious organizations or political figures like us from coming and knocking on your door, but somebody trying to sell you cable or a home Nest system or something like that would take the heat and take the message. But I don't really have more to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Yes, to add to Mr. Lenko, please let us solicit for the next 90 days or so. But in all seriousness, the city does partner with certain businesses so that if you'd like to know which businesses we have said are reasonable to allow for solicitation, either by letters or by knocking or whatever, you can contact City Hall and you'll know whether they've registered with us as a business that can come to your home. So that's probably the best way. And then as Mr. Lenko suggested, just put a no solicit sign on your door, and if you have a problem, give City Hall a call.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Speaking of welcoming cities, just kidding. No, we have rules against soliciting. Obviously, if you put a no soliciting sign on your door, people are not going to knock on your door. But I know it's compelling to open the door even if you don't know someone, but sometimes I just don't open the door. But please feel free to report people who are doing that because it is a total nuisance. And that's, based on the rules and everything we just talked about, that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I will say that I experienced enforcement of this. I was on Woodside Park knocking on doors, and the police stopped me and asked if I was selling things, and I said, nope, just trying to get people to vote for me. And they said, go ahead. So if residents do have a concern, if there's a general consensus that there are too many organizations who seek a permit and are granted a permit and residents don't like that, then that's a good opportunity to send your feedback to the city commission, either through email or coming to one of the monthly meetings, and giving an example of if you had a bad experience with somebody who is trying to get signatures for a particular political issue or one of their nonprofit organizations, make sure that you communicate that to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Scott, you will start the next question. How would you describe your own understanding of the role of the city manager as compared to the role of commissioner?
The city manager is essentially responsible for day-to-day business of the city. It's set up in our charter, city charter. So if there's ever any question about the differences in roles and responsibilities, it's a quick check to our city charter to make sure that we're following our own rules as set forth many years ago. But that's essentially the role of the city manager, to make sure that the day-to-day business of the city happens. If there are decisions to be made, then many of those decisions come to the commission for consensus.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Hi, I look at the city commission as consultants and voices of the community to communicate with the city manager and help guide the city and make decisions. I believe it's a collaborative. I believe that we go through the city manager for all aspects of the city, and he is the mouthpiece, and we are the mouthpiece for the city, and work together to make good decisions and guide.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I agree with the explanation of what the city manager's responsibility is. The city commission is there to provide the city manager with direction and then to approve the major decisions. So the city manager may go out and gather all of the information that the city commission needs to make its decision. But I do think that there's a responsibility for the commission to give good direction to the city manager based on resident feedback, and then also as a check on the city manager to make sure that if the city manager is doing things and lots of residents are not happy with it, that it's the commission's responsibility to give the city manager direction to change what he or she's doing.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
There are 2,500 residents and only one gym. The city commission's job is to listen to the residents. I commit when I'm elected to listen to your concerns and issues. As far as organization and structure go, to go back to kind of the corporate structure, the city manager acts like the CEO and the commission acts like the board of directors. So the city manager on a day-to-day basis is the boss. All of the administrators report up to him. He brings recommendations to the city commission, but the city commission then asks pointed and intelligent questions, challenges the city manager, and moves the ball forward and usually in a different and better direction. So it's a process of checks and balances, as Mr. Campbell brought up, and again, I commit to listen and be there for you.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. The next question will start with Ms. Wall. Why did we not allow people to sit on the grass in the middle of Woodward during Dream Cruise?
I don't know this for sure, so I'm going to preface it by saying that I'm guessing for safety reasons. I don't think it would be very safe for people to sit on the lawn in the middle of a Dream Cruise, because if something happened and a car went up on the median, I think that would be bad.
Okay. Mr. Campbell? I'm sorry, were you done? Mr. Campbell?
I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I'll look it up, and then if the person who is curious wants to send me an email, I'll get the answer for you.
Mr. Lenko?
I'll be upfront and honest. I don't know the answer to that. As far as danger is concerned, I would say that it's probably similar to being on the other curb as well, but I don't know the answer. But as part of my community platform, an ECO community, is to bolster the intersection. When I was on the DDA and Planning Commission, I was part of the subcommittee that developed the intersection to where it is today. It used to be two very skinny lines. Now it's the zebra striping. There were plans for bigger and better visibility, bigger and better, more visible options. And I would like to see those implemented so the children and residents on the east side where I live can make it over to the pool safely, and vice versa. The residents from the west side can bicycle over to the various restaurants and such on the east side.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
The question was specific to medians.
Well, it said, why did we not allow people to sit on the grass in the middle of Woodward during Dream Cruise?
Right. As a general statement, we don't like people to cross Woodward where there aren't crosswalks. So many of the medians don't have places where you can cross into the median. You have to take a sidewalk or other places. And so it's not so easy to do that. There's maybe one or two places, but not as a general rule. We want people to be safe. On the upside, we have many, many parks along Woodward. So there's really not a need to sit in the median. I borrowed a whole park for Dream Cruise. So it's possible in Pleasant Ridge that if you want to have a party in a park, just borrow a park. Don't worry about the median. That's the kind of town we live in. So my suggestion would be take advantage of the resources that are available to us. By all means, if there's property that you want to borrow, it's actually available to you as a resident.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Campbell. We're coming to the end here. We've got maybe 3 more questions. I'm going to combine a couple of questions. One person wrote a comment that pertains to beautification, and I just got a question about that. So I'm going to read this person's comment and then read the question. We have a beautiful walkway through Gainsborough Park. I'm concerned about the dead trees that are along the walkway in the park by the play structure. And then this question is, considering how all of you have spoken so highly regarding the beautification of our city, what would you do in response to a neighbor's house in disrepair for an extended period of time?
I think one of the things is if the reason for the disrepair is because the person does not have the physical ability or the funds to make those improvements, then potentially the idea that I talked about earlier about pooling some of residents who want to volunteer to help with some of those projects, that we could do it in that way. I would like to see, there are a lot of branches on some of the trees that have not been trimmed in a long time, and I'd be interested in understanding what the plan is. There's a good plan to replace trees when they die, but I'm not sure that there's a good plan for regularly pruning those trees. Thank you,
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko?
So I would say diligent DPW work, staying on top of it. I mean, if we have somebody who's in charge of running the parks, that should be part of the responsibility, is keeping the large assets alive and well. As far as disrepair, the city is one big family. We are one PR, and I would like to see the city work with residents to enact the change to bring their house up to code. So, there are various, reasons and so forth that a house falls into disrepair, but having a reasonable and measured approach that yields the results of a more appealing house, but also doesn't impose unnecessary burden on the resident is an important balance to strike.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
On the tree question, we're about to undergo some tree maintenance over this fall and I believe into next spring. And so you will see some trees coming down. I don't know about this particular tree, but I'll ask tomorrow morning to confirm whether that particular tree is on the list of trees to be maintained. So you'll see that around town. And then on the maintenance of homes, this is really why code enforcement is so critical. Mr. Lenko touched on it a bit there. The regular, steady maintenance of a home is the best thing that you can do for your house, is just to make sure that it is consistently well maintained, and then it isn't falling into disrepair. But if you are finding yourself living next to someone who isn't maintaining their home, then as uncomfortable as it is a good thing to do to let the city know that there might be an issue, because there might be something that the city can do to help that person get that house in the state and condition that it needs to be in for their own benefit as well as the benefit of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
I believe that maintenance is critical with all the parks and everything we invest in. I learned that when I was working on the Gainsborough Park project. People are very concerned about maintenance because we can build all these great things, but if they're falling apart, it doesn't matter. So I would 100% support, being vigilant about maintaining trees, maintaining buildings that we have. I just think it's critical. And then as far as your comment about the neighbor, I would hope that people would have, if they're able, have a conversation with their neighbor to try to understand on a human level what the issue is and maybe offer some assistance. Obviously, if that doesn't work or you're not comfortable, I think that finding out why these people are having these issues, maybe the city can find out, but utilizing resources and programs to help the person, get it done, if it is a financial or if it is, like physical constraints that are not allowing this person to thrive.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. The next one will start with Mr. Lenko. We keep getting good questions, so. Mr. Lenko, water bills continue to be among the highest in the region. How would you address this?
So water bills are, and across the region, that is an accurate statement. And I just received my water bill today, and it was high. As far as reduction in the water bill, so there's multiple line items, and again, one of the items that I brought up earlier was composting. Compost is less expensive than physical waste. The EPA estimates that about 24% of all physical garbage is compost waste. So if we could defray that by moving it out of the stream, our trash bill would go down. On top of that, better water management, as Commissioner Scott brought up. The city has a leakage problem, so wherever possible and whenever possible, when cost wouldn't be unnecessary or undue, to enact and redo infrastructure to reduce loss.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Scott?
Well, going back about 4 years, we went through a lot of work to restructure what we'll call the utility bill, because it contains more than water. And we wanted to make sure that residents had a better way of understanding exactly what was in the bill. And you'll see the reprinting of the bill makes it more clear. Maybe it's still not as desirable as we would like it to be, but at least we understand where the money is going when you put the money into the bill. And if you look at water rates for Pleasant Ridge in comparison to other cities, we're actually not that bad off. So it just seems expensive because we do have larger yards than some other communities, and we do like to keep our lawns green, which has an effect. But that's where we're at. So we wanted to make sure that people understood how much water they were using and what portion of the bill is associated with water. On the city level, whenever we replace a road, we scope all of the lines under the road to make sure that there isn't a lot of seepage, so that the city itself isn't costing itself a lot of money. We do whatever repairs are necessary at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall?
Hi. Yes, the water bills are expensive. I would investigate, but I know that the city did a good job 4 years ago or 5 years ago of, going down different roads, trying to find the best way to bring our water costs down. Commissioner Scott just said it. SACWA, I know it's hard to believe, SACWA just released a water rate study, and we were actually below the average, which I was surprised, but it's true. So, but I guess if I was elected, I would 100% look at, if there are any other efficiencies we could find and bring the water down in any, feasible way. I'm all about saving money.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I think the restructuring portion of it, I think there was a pretty good debate on Facebook about how the waste portion of it is calculated. Unfortunately, each city in the county is allocated a certain portion of the waste cost that is, I don't know that that's negotiable. One of the things I'd like to see if we can, I know Commissioner Krzyjak had brought up, is there a way of making more individualized charges per household based on the amount that they use? Right now the city's been divided up into zones, but maybe there's an opportunity to divide it up even smaller. And I'd also like to see if there's an opportunity for us to, again, economy of scale, a program to purchase rain barrels so that residents who would like to purchase rain barrels to reduce the amount of water that they use to water their lawns or their gardens could be available at a discounted rate.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Okay, for the last question, there are 3 questions that have come in speaking about you, your personality, your character. So I'm going to give you a minute and a half and read these 3 questions in a condensed form, and I can repeat them for you if you want. And this will start with Mr. Scott. So tell us how you differentiate yourself from your competition. Would you ever vote against the city commission? And if you were already on the commission, have you ever done this? And are you running to change or maintain the direction of the Pleasant Ridge Commission? Let me read those one more time. How do you differentiate yourself from your competitors? Would you ever vote against the rest of the commission? And are you running to change or to maintain the direction of the Pleasant Ridge Commission? We'll give them a minute and a half, Ann.
Well, I kind of describe myself as the Spock of the city commission. I'm pretty neutral, and by that I mean I take in all the input that I can before I draw a conclusion. I tend to have 1 cup of facts and 1 teaspoon of emotion until there's something that really strikes me as just needing a lot of emotion. That tends to be my nature in life and on the city commission. So I'm hoping you've seen that in the last several years on the commission, where I really do try to grab all of the information that I can and present a reasonable conclusion, and that's how I vote. I have to think back over the last 3.5 years if I ever voted against something, but there have been times where I voted in favor of the city in a direction where it was not necessarily what I would have done for myself, because it was better for the city, not necessarily for myself. And then change versus stay the same. So I believe that the city is on a really good path. I'm not looking for any dramatic change to the way that the city runs. There are some things that will pop up over the next 4 or 5 years that I think we have to be mindful of. More attention on Woodward Avenue and rapid transit. We have some technology issues that might pop up where phone lines might go away, and we have to start thinking about the 6 of our residents that don't have internet at home. What do we do about their phone service? These are the kinds of things that might pop up over the next 3 or 4 years that might require us to tweak what we offer in terms of utilities and services and Woodward to make things better. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Wall.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, can you read it one more time?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
How would you differentiate yourself from your competitors? Would you ever vote against the rest of the commission? And are you running to change or maintain the direction of the commission?
Okay. I would differentiate myself from the competitors as far as my work I've put in, as far as 10 years volunteering, 5 years, 5 years vice president of the foundation. I know everybody has, well, most people have experience. I've put my money where my mouth is as far as the rec commission, 6 years. I was dedicated to helping the community get that Gainsborough Park project off the ground. I've also chaired the last 2 auctions, which raised $100,000 for our city and went directly to benefit our city. As far as the rec commission, or as far as right behind here, we're having the whole new area paved and beautified and lighting, so when people rent this, it'll be a more beautiful area for them and for all of us to enjoy as well. I'm committed 100%. I get things done, and I'm a worker. That's how I would differentiate myself. I would absolutely vote against the city commission if I didn't believe that we are going in the right direction. I have no problem in voicing my opinion based on what I think is best for the city. And the last part was?
What was it?
Change.
Yes. Are you running to change or maintain the direction?
I think that the direction the city is going in is positive. I think we've had a lot of good things happen. Things like Commissioner Scott said, things will come up that will be issues that I will, happily address and address it the way that I feel that the residents see fit and that, my own experience and my knowledge, and help that way.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Campbell?
So I think I'm the least known commodity up here. So Alex is a lifelong resident. Amanda's been here for 16 years and been on the foundation, and Brett's a current commissioner. So I think the thing that differentiates me is I have to work twice as hard to meet all of you, and I'm hope that I'm doing that, and I can continue to do that up until November 7th. I think that the direction, I would absolutely vote against the consensus of the committee and the commission, and I think I have done so. I've voiced my opposition when the city commission votes in a way that I didn't agree with, both by sending emails to the commissioners and also in the open forum section of the monthly commission meetings. I think the direction of the city is going in is very good, but we've also had some significant improvements that come with some significant costs, and I think that we're moving into a time in the city's history where we have to start talking about preserving what we have and maintaining what we have, and working within the budgetary constraints that we have, so that we're not coming back for another millage in 2 or 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Lenko.
So I would differentiate myself, again, being a lifelong resident, and the organization of my eco platform. So collaborating with various groups and clubs. In 2011, I coordinated with Mark Kuber and the Pleasant Ridge Club and the Pleasant Ridge Foundation the centennial anniversary for the Pleasant Ridge Club, which was a great big pig roast over in Gainsborough Park pre-renovations. So being a lifelong resident and being able to collaborate with people, that I think differentiates myself. Being cost conscious and being in a profession where, my job on a daily basis is to control cost, I will bring that same attitude and energy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not looking to impose self-harming austerity or anything like that. I'm not against self-harming. I want to see Pleasant Ridge here for at least another 100 years, if not longer, right? So being where we are and this tiny little blip on the Woodward Corridor, we need to take special control and practice of our resources and our funds. And with that, I will bring cost controlment.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Okay, closing statements. We'll do these in reverse alphabetical order, so we'll start with Ms. Wall.
Okay. I just want to be clear about what I believe in. I believe in supporting our police department and all the city programs that people hold dear. I believe in local government. I believe in the residents having a huge voice in what happens in the city and people being heard. I believe in educating people on all the different programs so that people can make educated decisions and get involved. And involving and having the opportunity for everybody to get involved, because I feel like when I've talked to people, a lot of people say they don't even know where to go or what to do. So I would like to take that on to help educate and enfold people into this wonderful community so they can, feel like they're a part and be invested. I hope you will consider me. I consider it a great honor to be sitting before you, and with my whole heart, I love this city, and I just, I really hope that you vote for me and give me the opportunity to work for you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Scott.
Yes, thanks for coming again tonight. I actually took some notes for things to follow up on after the meeting, because I think there's some really good ideas that came out of today's discussion. I'm running because, as with Ms. Wall, I really do love the city. It's a special place. I've lived in lots of places around the country, and it's amazing how connected people are here, how the city administration knows everyone and really does try to take care of us all. Our police department, our police members all know us, and it makes for a special place. So my goal in running is to keep that going. In order for residents to benefit from all of that, there's some things that the city has to do to make sure that we stay financially stable, that we maintain all of our property, our assets, our roads, and that we make things available to residents to use. And that's what I would hope to do on the City Commission looking forward. So thanks again for coming tonight, and thanks for all of my running mates. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Lenko.
So quickly, I'm going to plug my website, which is alexlenko.com. I have 3 candidate coffee events coming up at residents' homes, generous enough to offer, and those dates are available on the website. Thank you again, League of Women Voters, for putting this event on and allowing democracy to unfold as it does. In summary, I'd like to think I represent Old Pleasant Ridge and New Pleasant Ridge as one Pleasant Ridge, bringing the past and the future together. That's kind of, it's represented and there's a ceramic tortoise at the new Gainsborough Park that was a staple of my childhood, and it warms my heart every time I walk my dog past it. Because to the dog park, where the old benches that used to be at the pool are set up as flower beds. I mean, it is a special city, and I want to deliver my eco platform again, which is environment, organization, and community to the wonderful residents of Pleasant Ridge. So I would appreciate your vote and your support on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lenko. Mr. Campbell.
So again, thanks to everybody for coming. The quality of the questions was great. Thank you. Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for the effort that you put in holding this. And I wanted to spend a little bit more time thanking my fellow candidates, because I do appreciate that you've put yourself out there to run. I've had a lot of residents who have thanked me for even putting my name in the ring, and I think the number of people who are interested in getting involved in city government says great things about who we are as a community. I hope that we can continue this conversation as I try and get out there and meet every single one of you before November 7th. I hope we can spend a little bit more time talking about your ideas for the city and ways to improve what we've already been doing and potentially reduce some of our costs. And then also spend a little bit more time talking about the school district question. As an expecting father, that's probably one of the biggest decisions that Megan and I have coming in front of us. So again, thanks for coming, and hope to speak with you on your doorstep.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you to all the candidates, and thank you to the audience for such great questions. Also on the ballot, November 7th, is a millage proposal that's been discussed tonight. I'm going to read that proposal for you right now. It's Proposal 20171, Police Pension Stabilization Millage Proposal. Don't ask me to interpret this for you when I'm done reading it. I'm sure the city has information for you. Shall the city of Pleasant Ridge be authorized to levy up to an additional 1.40 mils, which is $1.40 per $1,000 of taxable value, for the purposes of funding currently underfunded police pensions? The millage shall be authorized for a period of 15 years, with the first levy in July 2018, provided that the city shall not be authorized to increase such levy by more than 0.35 mils in 2018, or by more than an additional 0.35 mils each year thereafter, up to the maximum millage herein authorized. The intent of this request is to allow the partial restoration of city charter authorized millage, which was reduced by Section 31 of Article 9 of the State Constitution of 1963. The initial 0.35 mil increase would raise the sum of approximately $50,750 in 2018. Yes or no? That concludes our forum for the evening. Again, thank you to the candidates, thank you to the audience for submitting great questions and for your attention tonight. There's more nonpartisan information on the League's website, or there will be probably next week. Our website is lwvoa.org, and look for voter guides, and you can read information submitted by these candidates and any other city election you might be interested in. CMN TV has been filming this broadcast tonight and will be replayed somewhere. You can check the League's website for replay times and channels, or you can check CMN TV's website. The League is funded by contributions from concerned businesses and citizens like you. Membership is open to anyone over 18. Membership is open to women and men. Don't forget to vote on November 7th. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you so much, everybody.